whether you break the promises of the United States government to people all over the world, as well as its own citizens, just makes no sense. So it ought to be banned as a weapon. I mean, it should be like nuclear bombs. I mean, basically too horrible to use.
Okay, there's a guy who probably knows a little bit about how the way the financials markets work. Of course, that's Warren Buffett talking about the idea of messing around with the debt limit here. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is not just debt limit, consequences, rational and insanity on it, but also what maybe the end game out of this thing is, because as we said right before the break, 10 days before that kicks in, and the longer and longer the government shutdown continues, you're going to start seeing some actual real consequences to the economy as well. Okay, Andrew, let's talk about, you would think everybody sees, and every economist agrees with Warren Buffett, the reason why, even with all the stupidity that we'll see in Washington, no one's ever done this, is because everybody knows this is bad on a global level, let alone across America, to screw around with the debt limit. But there are actually some Republicans who not only are saying, well, it won't be terrible, some actually think it's not a bad idea at all.
You know, Rich, we often come up with these concepts when we're talking about government that are hard to understand or hard to follow. The debt limit is the simplest thing to possibly understand, because anybody who's had a credit card knows how this thing works. You go to a store, you use your credit card, you're making a commitment to make that payment at some point down the road. The equivalent here of the debt limit is just not paying your credit card bill, and I think we all know what happens if you don't pay your credit card bill at home. And not even paying the interest
in your credit card bill, because that's the kicker.
Right, not paying any part of it. But so that's I think what everybody can understand. And yet you have some key Republicans practically daring us to default. Paul Ryan, who was the vice presidential nominee in 2012, the head of the budget committee, their budget wonderkind, had this quote in 2011: if a bondholder misses a payment for a day or two or 3 or 4, what is more important is you're putting the government in a material better position to better pay its bills going forward. In other words, missing the debt limit, not that big a deal. Texas's Joe Barton thinks it's like waiting a month to pay your cable bill. Well, we have in my household, he wrote, some budget bills that have to be paid and some bills that only paid partially. But the favorite, the best, is from some guy named Ted Yoho in Florida. Quote, not raising the debt ceiling would bring stability to the world's markets. Rich, there is every bit of evidence that it would do exactly the opposite. Throw us immediately back into a recession and cause all sorts of chaos around the world.
And literally, the payments wouldn't be made. And what happens when somebody needs a Social Security check to come in the mail? What happens for the veterans who need the payments? What happens to somebody who needs their Medicare check? What happens here if you're in the markets? And all of a sudden, globally, what's the gold standard? Treasury bills. If people think that we're not going to pay what's due on the Treasury bills, they're going to stop buying them. And then if we default on our loans, money we've already spent, by the way, then what happens? They're going to raise the interest rates here for lending us money going forward. So forget about the stupidity and the dislocation we'll cause. If we ever come back after it, we're going to have to pay more out of our pocket, making a bigger national debt. And then moreover than that, people will go somewhere else because they can't trust America for the first time. Finally, if you have any money in the market, imagine what will happen. I'm hearing estimates that it could go down 15, 20% in the course of a week or so here if there causes a panic sell-off because all of a sudden people are taking money out of the economy.
And that may be what it takes for action to spark in this. That may be what it takes for John Boehner to actually break with Republicans.
Right.
We did this about a year and a half ago. We had another debt limit problem where we came close to hitting the debt limit, but we averted it and we had a deal at the last minute. But if you recall, the markets sold off in the days leading up to that deadline. Now we're 10 days away from the next deadline. We could start seeing the markets peeling off.
Dominic, though, Boehner said, hey, we're not going to screw around with a debt limit. America doesn't default in its debt.
That's what he's quoted as saying.
Now he's saying a different tune. I always think, okay, this is all posturing. But in the last year or so, I don't know where the line is for these guys.
I don't think it's posturing on his part. I really don't. I think he has decided, being the speaker, meaning the speaker, that he is going to keep his job as speaker. That is the top priority to him. We'll find out in just a couple of days. Because these Republicans that you just quoted, I really believe what this is all about. They want to put the finances in order, but they want to deny success to this president. I really believe that's what this is all about.
The part that Dom said is it's as simple as that. John Boehner, when he gets up in the morning, has to make a decision. Do I want to be Speaker of the House and basically report to Ted Cruz and 40 nut jobs? Or do I want to do what I'm already on record as saying is the right thing and the prudent thing for America? I'm not talking some courageous stand. I'm saying about paying our bills. You don't default in the debt. Nobody has ever done this, okay? No speaker has ever advocated for this kind of craziness. He has to decide, you know, if he's going to man up here or if he's going to capitulate to the worst, the worst that Washington has, because they don't even bother to know the issue. If you take a principled stand, do it on principle. For somebody to say, like this guy Yoho, that this is good for America, he clearly is insane and doesn't know the basic math.
But is he really insane?
Yes.
Because he can hide behind his constituents that support this move.
Right.
So is he really insane, or is he doing what the voters of his district want?
Quickly, guys. Endgame, you think this thing gets resolved in the next week?
Endgame, they give Boehner a bone. He tries to sell it.
You keep moving on.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Freudian slip.
Yeah.
I'd say the 13th or the 14th, the markets start to dive and we get something that extends it. Short term, we'll have to fight this fight again coming down the road.
A big part of this is actually all rooted back to Citizens United, okay? 2.0, they're calling it Citizens United. Supreme Court, it's taken up a case that could let campaign cash flow even more freely than it is now. And trust me, a lot of that is at the root of where we are today in our nation's politics. Well, is that good or bad for democracy? You know what I have to say, Anna. When we come back, we'll hear from a guest who'll give us their perspective. Stay with us.